Chapter 7, Part 2. There might be Chapter 7, Part 3, and Part 3.5. It's a really long chapter of amazing consequence. Stuff starts to turn. So, this is a really great book, and it's unfolding well. Those of you who haven't been following previous chapters don't know, you might have to come through and listen up. This is the avatar before Roku. Yes. It goes Young Chen, female airbender, Kyoshi, female earthbender, Roku, male firebender, then Aang. Okay, so they said that when they were Kuruk, who was before, see if I got it wrong. Yang Chen, Kuruk, Kyoshi, Roku, Aang. Kuruk was the male waterbender avatar who was kind of a party animal and a romantic who only lived to be 33. And the people who Kyoshi are around ran with him when they were young. They were team avatar to Kuruk, and that was Heiran, fire, female. Jianzhu, earth bender. Kelsang, airbender. And they're now older now and looking after Yun, the supposed avatar. But they ran with Kirk when they were young. Okay, enough blah, blah, blah. Those are 4 minutes. Sorry. 1 minute, 35 seconds for the precision people. It was a very awkward dinner. Tagaka set up a luxurious camp. The centerpiece, a yurt as big as a house. The interior was lined with rugs, tapestries of mismatching colors that kept the cold out, but they also served as markers of how many ships she had plundered. Stone lamps filled with melted fat provided an abundance of light. Very Eskimo, Inuit. Low tables and seat cushions were arranged in the manner of a feast. Yun held the place of honor and Tagaka across. She didn't mind the rest of the table being filled by the avatar's inner circle. Jianshu's uniformed guardsmen rotated in and out, trading sneers with the Pirate Queen's assortment of corsairs. They have great vocabulary. So a corsair is like a pirate, and obviously a guard. The Fifth Nation described themselves as an egalitarian outfit that disregarded the boundaries between the elements. According to the propaganda they sometimes left behind after a raid, no nation was superior, and under the rule of their enlightened captain, any adventurer or bender could join them in harmony regardless of origin. This is echoes for like today, right? In reality, the most successful pirate fleet in the world was going to be nearly all sailors from the water tribes. And the food reflected that. To Kyoshi, most of the meal tasted like blood, the mineral saltiness too much for her. Waterbender, fish food. She did what she could to be polite, watched Yun eat in perfect alignment with water tribe custom. As Yun downed another tray of raw blubber, blubber is like fat from a seal or a walrus, and apparently it's very buttery, tasty, salty, meat, oil. Yeah, like bacon and stuff. Okay, Tagaka was cheering him on. Kyoshi wanted to whisper in Rangi's ear and ask if they should be afraid of poison. Or the prospect of the dinner party stabbing them in the back with their meat skewers. Anything that reflected the hostilities must have been bubbling under the surface. But why were they being so friendly? It became too much once they began setting up the pie show boards for the members of Tagaka's crew, who fancied themselves a match for the young avatar's famous skills. Kyoshi nudged Rangi in the side and tilted her chin at the merriment. Rangi knew exactly what she was asking. While everyone's attention was focused on Yun, playing 3 opponents at once, she pointed with her toe at 2 men and 2 women who had silently entered the tent after the party to clean up the plates. They were Earth Kingdom citizens. Instead of pirates' mismatched riot of pilfered clothing, they wore plain peasant's garb, which has got to be green, because like the earthbenders. And though they weren't chained or restrained, they carried out their duties in a hunched and clumsy fashion, like people who feared for their lives. The stolen villagers. Yun and Rangi had undoubtedly spotted them earlier. Kyoshi cursed herself for treating them as invisible when she knew what it was like to move amongst people she served. Because remember, she was a servant. The entire time, Yun had been putting on a false smile while Tagaka paraded her true spoils of war in front of him. That's what she stole the most. People. And that's why they're trying to make this treaty. Rangi found her trembling hand and gave it a quick squeeze, sending a pulse of reassuring warmth over her skin. Stay strong. They watched Yun demolish his opponents in 3 different ways simultaneously in Pai's show. Then he blitzed down, second he forced into a no-win, and the third he lured into a trap so diabolical the pirate thought he was winning the whole time until the last 5 moves when he lost. The audience roared when Yun finished the last one off. Coins and clinked and wagers traded hands, and the challengers got jeers from their comrades. Tell me, Avatar, are you enjoying yourself? Said Tagaka. I've been to many places around the world, said Yun, and your hospitality is unmatched. I'm so glad. I was convinced you were planning to kill me before the night was through. The atmosphere of the gathering went from full speed to a dead stop. Tagaka's men seemed surprised as Jianzhu's. The stillness that ran through the party nearly created its own sound. The tensing of neck muscles, hair standing on end, you could feel it all. In just a few words. Kyoshi tried to glance at Master Amok. Remember? The waterbending dude who had, dyed his eyes to look like an earthbender? Without making it obvious, the hardened waterbender was sitting away from the main group and looked at Tagaka over the edge of his unused wine cup. The floor was covered in skins and rugs. Underneath was a whole island of water, which is basically weaponry for a waterbender, at his disposal. Instead of freezing like everyone else, though, Kyoshi could see his shoulders relaxing, loosening, ready for a sudden surge of fighting. She thought Jianzhu might say something, take over for Yun, now that the theatrics went off course, but he did nothing. Jianzhu calmly watched Yun stack the pie show tiles between his fingers as if the only thing he cared about was making sure his student displayed good manners. Mistress Tagaka, said Yun, if this is about the size of my contingent, I assure you we mean no harm or insult. The soldiers who came with me are merely an honor guard. I didn't want to bring them, but they were so excited about the chance to witness you make history with the Avatar. I'm not concerned about your flunkies with spears, boy. I'm talking about those 3. She pointed, her fingers forming a trident, and not at Amok or the Earth Kingdom soldiers, but at Jianzhu, Heiran, and Kelsang, Kurik's former team Avatar. I don't understand. Surely you know my bending masters. They're companions of Kurik. Oh, yes, I know them, and I know what it means when the grave digger of Zulu Pass darkens my tent in person. She's calling one of them the grave digger of Zulu Pass. I guess we'll find out. Yun was confused. His smile faded. Kyoshi had heard of these battles and locations, and they were associated with Jianzhu's name. Remember, he's the earthbending master. Zulu Pass was one of many on a long list. He was a hero of the Earth Kingdom. Are you referring to the story of my esteemed mentor piously interred the bodies of villagers he had found, cut down by rebels, giving them their final rest in dignity? He was just burying the dead, that's all. The game tiles clacked together. Tagaka shook her head. I'm referring to 5,000 Yellownecks buried alive. The rest terrorized into submission. The entire uprising crushed by one man, your esteemed mentor, Jianzhu. I'm curious, she turned to him. Do spirits haunt you when you sleep? Or did you plant them deep enough that the earth muffles their screams? There was a hollow thunk as one of the game pieces slipped out of his grasp and bounced on the board. Kyoshi had never heard of this. Yun had never heard of this. Now that he was being addressed directly, Jianzhu deemed it proper to speak. Respectfully, Tagaka, I fear that the rumors from the Earth Kingdom interior grow wilder the closer they get to the South Pole. Many tales of my past are pure exaggeration. Respectfully, I gained my position through knowing facts beyond what you think a typical blue-eyed southern waterbender from the countryside should know. For example, I know who holds the Royal Academy record for the most accidental kills during Agni Kai's Madam Headmistress Heiran. Ooh, she is dishing, huh? Royal Academy record for accidental kills during Agni Kai's. Okay. If Heiran was offended by this, she didn't show it. Rangi looked like she was going to leap onto Tagaka and cook the woman's head off. Kyoshi instinctively reached out to her and got her hand swatted away, though. And Master Kelsang, listen, young Avatar, have you ever wondered why my fleets stay cooped up in the Eastern Sea, where the pickings are slim, where we engage in costly battles with other crews? It's because of him, right there, and she pointed at Kelsang. Of the three masters, only Kelsang looked afraid of what she would reveal. The other two did not. He looked ashamed. Kyoshi already wanted to defend him from whatever charge. Kelsang was hers. My father, said Tagaka, called him the living typhoon. A typhoon's a hurricane. We criminal types have a fondness for theatrical nicknames, but in this case, it was actually correct. Granddad once took the family and a fleet westward, around the southern tip of the Earth Kingdom. The threat they presented must have been great because Master Kelsang, a young man, though at the height of some power, rode out on his bison and summoned a storm and turned everyone back. Sounds like a perfect solution to a naval threat without any bloodshed, right? But have you pulled a shivered timber the size of a Jian from your thigh, or been thrown into the sea and then tried to keep your head above a 30-foot wave? That's what a typhoon does. Tagaka drank in the airbender's discomfort and smiled, and said more. I thank you, Master Kelsang. I lost several uncles on that one expedition. You saved me from a gruesome succession battle. But fear of a repeat performance has kept us, the Fifth Nation, and other crews in the Eastern Sea. My father's entire generation terrified of you, one single air nomad. They thought Kelsang was watching from the peaks of the Southern Air Temple, patrolling the skies. Kyoshi looked at Kelsang, who was now hunched in agony. Agony is pain. Were you? She thought. Is this where you went between stays in Yokoya? You were hunting pirates? A lesson from your airbending master, said Tagaka to Yun. The most effective threat is only performed once. So you can imagine my distress when I saw you bring this collection of butchers to our peace treaty. I thought for certain it meant violence. Yun hummed, pretending to be lost in thought. The pie show board Tali de Fumble was flipping over his knuckles. Mistress Tagaka, said Yun, you have nothing to fear from my masters, and if we're going to give credence to some gruesome reputations, I believe I would have equal concern for you. Yes, you do. The mission hinged there on the eye contact between Yun and Tagaka, the undisputed lord of the Eastern Sea. She might have been looking at the Avatar, but Kyoshi could only see her friend, Yun, who was young, vulnerable, and very much out of his element. Whatever Tagaka was searching for inside Yun's head, she found it. She backed off and she smiled. You know, it's bad luck to undertake an important ceremony with blood on your spirit. I purified myself of my past crimes with sweat and ice before you arrived. But with the stain of so much death still hanging on your side, pointing to the three, I feel the need to do it again before tomorrow morning. You may stay here as long as you'd like. Tagaka snapped her fingers and her men filed out of the tent. The Earth Kingdom captives went last, ducking through the exit flags. The act seemed planned insult by Tagaka, designed to say, they're more afraid of me than hopeful of you. Janju swung his hands and go, oh, you did well, Yun. Is it true? Kyoshi had never heard Yun interrupt his master before, from the twinge in his brow. Neither had Janju. The Earth Sage, he said, is it true? Like he was talking to him about his past crimes, and he interrupted him. But you didn't do it to a master then. The Earth Sage sighed in a manner that the others would not. Is what true, Yun? 5,000. You buried 5,000 people alive? That's an overstatement made by a criminal. Then what's the truth, Janju? 500? 100? What's the number that makes it justified? He laughed. The truth is that the Yellownecks they were just the lowest order, who thought they could plunder, murder, and destroy with no thought. They saw nothing, no future beyond the points of their swords. They believed they could hurt people with no consequences. He slammed his finger on the center of the pie show board. I brought consequences. Because that's what justice is. Nothing but proper consequences. I make it clear that whatever horrors they inflicted would come back to haunt them, no more, no less. And guess what? It worked. The remnants of the Dao Fei that escaped me dispersed into the countryside because the last they knew they would be consequences if they continued being outlaws. Dao Fei were gangs. Jianzhu glanced at the exit in the direction Tagaka had gone. Perhaps the reason you've never heard about this from decent citizens of the Earth Kingdom is because they see it the same way I do. A criminal like her watches justice being done and bewails the lack of forgiveness, conveniently forgetting about what they did in the first place, too. Yun looked like he had trouble breathing. Kyoshi wanted to go to his side, but Jianzhu's spell had frozen the air inside of the tent, immobilizing her. Kelsang spoke. Yun, you don't understand the times back then. We did what we had to do to save lives and maintain balance. We had to act without an avatar. How fortunate for you all, said Yun, steadying himself. Now you can shift the burden of ending so many lives onto me, the avatar. I'll try to follow the examples my teachers have set. Enough! Jianzhu was angry. You've allowed yourself to be rattled by baseless accusations of a pirate. The rest of you get out. I am going to speak to the avatar alone. Rangi stormed out the fastest, and Heiran watched her go. Maybe it was because they used the same tight-lipped expression to hide their feelings. But Kyoshi could tell she wanted to chase her down. But Heiran walked stiffly out of the opposite side of the tent instead. When Kyoshi looked back, Kelsang had already gone. She gave a quick bow to Jianzhu, avoiding contact, and ran after Kelsang. She found him a dozen paces away, sitting on a stool. You know, he said, after Kurek died, I thought my failure to set him on the right path was my last and greatest mistake, he said to Kyoshi. It turned out I wasn't finished disgracing myself. Kyoshi knew that the air nomads had all life as sacred. They were pacifists, and they considered no one their enemy. There was no criminal that couldn't be redeemed, but surely exceptional circumstances allowed for them these convictions, though they were strong, to be put on hold. Kelsang could be forgiven for saving entire towns along with the coast of the western seas because of what he did. I never told you how far I fell within the Southern Air Temple as a result of that day. I violated my beliefs as an airbender. I let my teachers down, and I let my entire people down. Kyoshi was angry on his behalf, but she didn't know who to be angry. She hugged Kelsang tightly. You never let me down. Do you hear? You never do. Kelsang put up with her attempt to crush his shoulder blades and rocked slightly in her embrace and patted her hands. She only let go in the sound of a plate shattering that pierced the stillness of the night. Yun and Jianzhu were still inside, and that's where the crash had come from. Kelsang stood up. Go back to camp. The muffled sound of arguing grew louder and louder through the tent walls. Are they going to be all right? I'll check. Go now, Kyoshi. Kelsang hurried to the tent and ducked in. She could hear the commotion stop as soon as he entered. The silence was ominous. Kyoshi poised there, wondering what to do. She decided she had better listen to Kelsang. She didn't want to overhear Yun and Jianzhu have it out anymore. Okay, Chapter 7, Part 2. Chapter 7's a long chapter, and lots is unfolding. Pick it up tomorrow.